This is the tale of John Ward, an aging English seaman who climbed from the deck to become one of the era's most feared pirates, haunting the waters of the Mediterranean as a blade for hire of the Barbary corsairs from North Africa. From almost nothing to real power is a remarkable ascent. Wealth piled up, influence grew, and hundreds of men pledged themselves to his command. 4 centuries on, his tale persists in popular culture as the inspiration for the 21st century's most famous fictional pirate, Captain Jack Sparrow. He acted for his own gain, answerable to no master. But how did a penniless fisherman forge a legacy that spanned the Mediterranean and beyond, earning him the title of Pirate King? John Ward was born near Faversham, a small town on England's southeast coast. He grew up a commoner and a fisherman, spending his days at sea in a brutal, perilous trade to barely support himself and his wife. Fishing was a hard life, a grueling seasonal grind. Returns were uncertain, and there was no guarantee the catch would feed the family, let alone turn a profit. In 1585, Ward spots a chance. War with Spain is looming, and Elizabeth I lacks a full navy to confront the empire. Her solution is to outsource privateering. English sailors would chase Spanish ships and take their cargo. A share of the spoils goes to the crown, while the rest belongs to the men who went to sea. But conditions for ordinary seafarers were brutal. Pay was uncertain, danger was constant, and long separations from family were the norm. Yet thousands of civilians went to sea in search of fortune. Seasoned fishermen and experienced sailors, but also many who had never left dry land. By English law, these adventurers were deemed legal raiders, private men of war. To Spanish merchants, who dreaded attacks, they were simply pirates. The lure of privateering, or even piracy, made the risks seem worthwhile for many who sought wealth on the water. John Ward volunteers for the perilous path, leaving behind the brutal, unreliable fishing trade. He spends 18 years at sea, not just surviving, but thriving as a privateer. Elizabeth I's death in 1603 abruptly ends Ward's rise. His successor, James I, seeks to restore peace with Spain and harbors a dislike for privateering. Having long resented the harassment of Scottish shipping when he ruled Scotland, he now vows to eradicate privateering from England. Overnight, the privateer, once a legal raider, is turned into a criminal and outlawed by the crown, leaving Spanish ships to sail unmolested and imposing harsh penalties on violators. With the crown withdrawing its backing for violence at sea, there was no longer state support for privateers. Those once legal raiders were left adrift as official captains and crews found other employment, and most former sailors had little choice but to turn to piracy. Ward, now 50 and unemployed, faces a stark set of options. He could sign on with the King's Navy for a meager salary, press on as a pirate preying on Spanish ships, and risk the gallows if caught, or return to the hard, grinding life of fishing. Ward signs on with the Navy and is assigned to the ship Lion's Whelp. Life aboard is hard. Rations are meager, pay is poor or non-existent, and discipline is harsh. For some sailors, especially the young and inexperienced, the Navy offered certain advantages, since ships spent long periods in harbor to keep costs down, and the crews were spread over large numbers. But for an experienced seaman like Ward, it was far from ideal. He could have earned higher wages on a merchant vessel or on a raiding ship, and there would have been chances to trade or enrich himself that the Navy wouldn't provide. Almost at once, Ward begins to regret his choice. Only 2 weeks in, and discontent gnaws at him until he reaches a breaking point. In a shadowy tavern, a plan takes shape. He stirs his shipmates to desert the Navy and flee the country, his words convincing them that freedom awaits on the open. See, Led by Ward, the deserters vow to seize a small craft from Portsmouth Harbor. This plan is extraordinarily risky. Desertion under martial law is a serious crime, and seizing a small ship to sail off would amount to piracy. Yet Ward sees vast opportunities on the horizon. He and his men move stealthily through the harbor, overpower 2 watchmen, and take control of a small vessel. With anchor weighed, the deserters push into the open sea. Ex-Navy men, now branded as pirates by the authorities. Soon after they clear the harbor, Ward is chosen captain by the men who have followed him. In piracy, leaders are often elected by the crew, rather than appointed from above. And Ward's quick rise shows he could persuade and command those who had chosen to follow him. His navigation skill and experience as a sailor earned their respect and confidence to sail wherever he could lead them. They hijack a vessel named the Violet and set their course for the Mediterranean, leaving the coast behind as they push into warmer seas and unknown dangers. By 1603, the Mediterranean is a patchwork of rival states and frequent piracy. Fighting rages between the Muslim Ottoman Empire and the Christian principalities of southern Europe, largely at sea. The region offers abundant opportunities for Ward. It sits at the heart of lucrative trade between Venice and Genoa, and ports like Aleppo and Izmir. Raiders are already active in these waters, with corsairs drawing their name from the Corso, the long conflict between Islam and Christianity that gave birth to the term corsair. Heading there means entering a dangerous but lucrative scene, and the geography of the Mediterranean and North Africa provides harbors where pirates might find safe haven. By the time Ward reaches the Mediterranean, certain ports have become focal points for raiding. Salé on the Atlantic coast of Morocco, along with Algiers, Tripoli, Tunis on the North African coast, and Malta stand out. To survive, Ward needs ships, and he begins to build his fleet by seizing a 32-gun Dutch flyboat. Rather than killing the crew, he forces them to sail back aboard Ward's much smaller vessel. He renames the captured ship the Gift, and his career as a Mediterranean pirate is underway. Pirates relied on intimidation. Sometimes they fought the targeted ship, but more often they drew up alongside and used violence and aggression to force a surrender. Ward cruises the Mediterranean, taking an increasing number of ships with each raid. The cargoes are rich: luxury textiles, cotton, velvet, silk, spices, and dyes. Anything traded through these seas can become a prize for him. Ships in the Mediterranean were built for speed. Xebecs with lateen rigs, and often aided by oars, so vessels could move even when the wind failed. After months at sea with a small fleet, Ward begins looking for a friendly port to unload his stolen cargo. Ward's first stop is Algiers, a major hub for raiding. But an English pirate had recently attacked ships there, so English sailors are not welcome. When Ward sails into the harbor, he is seized and threatened with the death penalty. Ward manages to talk his way out, or even buy his freedom, by offering the plunder already in his hold. In exchange, he loses everything from the voyage except the ships themselves, allowing him to press on. He sails to Tunis, where the local ruler receives him with a far warmer welcome. In 1605, Ward sails into Tunis, a city ruled by the feared Kara Osman Bey, a former soldier who leads a formidable guild of corsairs, elite North African pirates who prey on ships across the Mediterranean. As Ward's ship glides into the harbor, the Dey recognizes an opportunity. Kara Osman funds Ward's enterprise by providing cash to stock his ship and placing some of his own men on board. The agreement is that Ward will hand over the stolen goods to Osman, who will store them and then sell them back to English merchants for a hefty profit. The two men strike a deal. The Dey takes a percentage of every captured cargo, with the former soldiers' backing. Ward could begin to forge a fearsome reputation as one of the Mediterranean's most notorious pirates. Ward and his fleet sail out with North African corsairs, attacking and seizing vulnerable ships. Ward confines his raiding to the Mediterranean, avoiding voyages to distant seas. The best targets and the richest plunder lie within these waters, where Christian shipping crosses familiar routes and Ward knows the lanes like the back of his hand. The corsair fleets, the Xebecs, are well known across the Mediterranean. But Ward now has a European-flagged vessel, manned by Europeans, giving him a chance to approach target ships without attracting suspicion. A real edge in these shipping lanes. A gunshot rings out nearby. Ward envisions a modest fleet built from seized merchant ships, which he would capture, refit with ordnance, arm and convert into his own ships of war. In 1606, after leaving Tunis, Ward spots a merchant vessel and captures it. Ward comes across a vessel called the John the Baptist, which he rechristens the Little John, a sly nod to Robin Hood, the great folk hero of the era. As with Plymouth's seafaring recruits, Ward employs his smooth, persuasive oratory to win the Little John's crew over and convince them to stay aboard. His charisma and leadership draw men into piracy, and once again he sways a merchant crew to embrace a life of plunder. This builds a through line in Ward's story. He appears as an outlaw and an anti-hero, challenging authority and acting in ways that some poor sailors see as a form of aid. Surviving records suggest he paid for the release of captives and helped English sailors in distress, while drawing ordinary seafarers, English, Dutch, and Islamic, from different backgrounds to join him. There is clear evidence that he is a true leader, keeping his crew cohesive as his ships, his men, and his plunder become the core of his life. A few years after fleeing the Navy, Ward is rich and successful, yet his appetite for more remains insatiable. After capturing the Little John, Ward presses on, seizing other prize ships, the Ruby and the Carminati, both Phoenician and highly valuable. He sails them back to Tunis, where the Dey's favor raises his standing. With the Dey's backing, Ward outfits 4 ships, the Little John, the Ruby, the Carminati, and the Gift, armed with cannons, swords, muskets, and every instrument of piracy. As these preparations unfold, Ward and his men live high in Tunis, a cosmopolitan port where traders and corsairs mingle. Sailors from across the Mediterranean rub shoulders on the docks. Their plunder fills their pockets, and they drift into taverns, brothels, and other entertainments. Some may form bonds with locals, even marriages. Ward's influence with the Dey grows as he contributes to the treasury on each voyage by bringing back loot. Ward and Kara Osman Dey become close. Among his circle, he is known as Jack, but legends say the Dey calls him Sparrow. Ward even bears a sailor's swallow tattoo on his arm, a mark that earns him the nickname Sparrow from the Dey. Months of planning have culminated as Ward leads a 4-ship flotilla out of Tunis toward the busy Adriatic lanes, where merchant vessels bound for Venice and back ply the routes. A ferocious storm batters the fleet, costing 2 of his ships, but the survivors press on. On April 26, 1607, Ward spots a colossal prize, Reniera e Soderina, one of the Venetian fleet's finest ships, crowded with passengers and a vast cargo of valuables. £2 million worth of cargo lies aboard the Soderina, a treasure trove of textiles, Luxury goods, cotton, silk, indigo, dyes, and spices like cinnamon. This haul would be a monumental coup for Ward. The ship is built large and heavily armed, designed to deter pirates smaller than it. Yet Captain John Ward is anything but ordinary. Even after losing half his fleet, he resolutely presses the attack. A gentle Adriat breeze drifts by, not enough to move the Sodarina, but enough to nudge Ward's 4 ships into firing range, bringing them within sight of the massive prize. It proves almost effortless for Ward to close in on the Sodarina. He opens fire as cannonballs rake the hull, while the Venetians answer with their guns. Ward remains ahead of the reply, deftly maneuvering his ships to keep out of range. For 3 grueling hours, he pounds the Sodarina, then orders his men to prepare for boarding. Surviving crewmen scramble to the quarterdeck to fend off the attackers, and, just before giving the word to engage, Ward has the gunners loose a volley of chain shot to cripple the rigging. A chain shot is a weapon in which 2 cannonballs are linked by a chain, designed to tear through masts and rigging. As it rakes the Sodarina, rigging is ripped apart, and men are thrown to their deaths, while others are shredded in an instant. Terrified survivors are cut down by the pirates as Ward's men board the disabled ship. John Ward has just become master and commander of one of the Mediterranean's finest ships, and the sole possessor of the vast wealth it carries. He shows no sense of the political storm he has unleashed. In a sense, this may be his greatest achievement, but it could also mark the start of his downfall. Ward's notoriety grows with the capture of the Reniera e Sodarina, but it triggers a diplomatic crisis. Venice learns their prized ship has been seized by an English pirate and demands compensation from King James. The king, still seeing himself as Europe's peacemaker, finds his mission tarnished by this renegade corsair in the Mediterranean. To avert war with Venice, he sends a fleet of pirate hunters into the Mediterranean in pursuit of Ward. Sensing danger, Ward ships a portion of the Sodarina's loot back to England in an attempt to negotiate a royal pardon. Piracy often runs on the same grim arithmetic. Have the loot, and you can bargain for a pardon. Without valuables to trade, you have nothing to offer if the law comes knocking. In Tunis, Ward spots a ready target, the ship called the Husband, heading for London, while its captain remains oblivious that the cargo is stolen treasure being loaded aboard. While anchored in Tunis, bundles of goods are loaded onto the Husband, along with a busily crowded group of passengers who mostly look English and carry conspicuous wealth. The Husband then casts off from Tunis, bound for London across the Mediterranean. But the Venetians have pieced Ward's scheme together. As the ship nears its English port, it is abruptly halted in its tracks. Venice's move leaves Ward with nothing to bargain with, effectively destroying any negotiating position he had over the cargo. With his leverage seized by his Venetian enemies, King James refuses a pardon, unwilling to risk war with Venice. And Ward realizes he can never return home to England. Yet, undisheartened, he schemes a Mediterranean raiding spree, turning the merchantman Sodarina into a battleship by carving ports into her hull to mount 70 brass guns. He launches a recruitment drive, gathering more than 400 sailors and soldiers. They set sail in early 1608, quickly capturing 2 English prizes and a French merchant vessel. But then a storm hits. The expensive refit has weakened the ship's timbers, and rain and waves batter the Sodarina as she begins to break apart. The Sodarina sinks with catastrophic loss, claiming 250 Englishmen and 150 Muslims. Ward is believed dead in the wreck, but he survives, slipping away in a smaller boat. Back in Tunis, he faces a reckoning. Many of the dead are husbands, fathers, uncles, and brothers of Tunisians who will never understand how he could survive while their loved ones perished. He seals himself in his mansion to dodge the outcry, increasingly relying on Kara Osman Bey for protection. Rather than flee, he makes a bold turn in 1610, converting to Islam and taking the name Yusuf Reis, ending his career. Stealing English life for good. All that was required, in theory, was to renounce your Christian faith and take on a Muslim name. In England, such a step was seen as a grave betrayal, an apostasy that cut you off from your church, your kin, your community, and even your monarch. Ward's decision to embrace Islam marks a defining break from the England he was raised in, making any return home nearly impossible. Those sailors who did make it back after converting were met with deep suspicion, for apostasy was regarded as a grievous offense against the church and required public humiliation and penance to win back acceptance in English society. Among converts, they called them renegades, and John Ward was one of the most notorious. Renegades were Christians who converted to Islam, and in the Ottoman world, they sometimes rose to notable positions. Many became ship captains or sailors based out of Ottoman ports like Algiers or Tunis, where conversion to Islam was common. The change could bring them local influence or, in some cases, reflect a genuine spiritual shift. I don't think Ward did it for religious reasons or to please the day. It was a calculated move to survive, born from 50 years of poverty and a refusal to accept a fixed role in life, generally speaking. This fact applied in both the Islamic world and the Christian world. To break into or do business within a culture, conversion was often expected. If you stayed non-Muslim, you could face danger, raids, capture, or even slavery, depending on the circumstances. By the 1580s, about half of Algiers' inhabitants were renegade Christians who had converted to Islam, with native Algerians forming a smaller share. These renegades were central to corsairing and piracy in the Mediterranean during that period, and Ward was among them, even earning the nickname Arch-Pirate. His conversion became a source of speculation, outrage, and amusement in England, culminating in 1612 when a popular dramatist wrote a play about the pirate, a Christian turned Turk. In the play, his conversion isn't portrayed as a move to gain money or social standing, unlike the pragmatic reasons some English sailors gave for converting. Instead, it's framed as a romantic choice, a longing to marry a Muslim woman. The moment of significance in the play is Ward's circumcision. Audiences of the time would likely have been stunned by this scene, seeing Ward's act as a symbolic renunciation of his former faith. In many ways, it would have been horrifying to English viewers to witness such a transformation. Audiences would have found it captivating, yet it remained deeply taboo to witness. For some, Ward was an object of scorn. For others, an inspiration. Scores of English pirates set their sights on the Mediterranean, chasing the lavish life they believed he enjoyed, and some even followed Ward into Islam. That supposed ease of conversion in the Islamic world would have terrified the authorities. To them, it could look like a new form of Ottoman expansion, territorial influence gained not by force, but by winning souls and reshaping allegiance. In the play, Ward's death is staged with heightened drama, a deliberate attempt by the playwright to debunk his legend and warn audiences that following him is a fruitless venture. Nevertheless, as Ward's notoriety grows, so too does his corsair fleet. His wealth and influence grew steadily. He commanded hundreds of men, effectively becoming the admiral of a private fleet. In the seafaring world, word of his exploits spread quickly, amplifying his reputation as he found success at every turn. Yet, in an unexpected twist, Ward turns to teaching, running what amounts to a pirate academy, where he trains the next generation of Barbary corsairs in the arts of gunnery and navigation. Ward's men looked up to him, and younger recruits joined the ranks to learn from his years at sea and his piracy in the region. His fame as one of England's most infamous pirates partly rests on providing North African city-states with the know-how to convert coastal vessels into ships capable of sailing the open ocean. For the first time, corsairs ventured into the Atlantic. Before Ward, North African fleets relied on oared galleys, and their raiding economy depended on manning those ships to patrol the coast. Ward's innovations helped push them on to the wider sea lanes. Ward introduces North Atlantic sailing ships to Tunis and the North African corsairs, square-rigged, round-hulled vessels that proved far more capable on the North Sea and across the Atlantic. Given his long years at sea, reaching his 50s before turning to piracy, he would have understood these ships inside out. By 1612, Ward has retired from piracy and is enjoying the fruits of his illicit labor. He settles into opulence in a Tunisian palace, surrounded by servants and ample supplies of strong drink. The elderly pirate can now indulge in luxuries and hobbies unimaginable to a poor fisherman from Kent. In 1616, the Scottish traveler William Lithgow met Ward and described him living in a Tunisian palace that gleamed with alabaster and marble, a man whose wealth and success were the talk of the region. Some accounts say he sent money home to his English wife, and that he may have taken a Tunisian wife as well. Late life rumors even claimed he spent time incubating eggs in camel dung. Yet peace did not come easily. Hunted for 2 decades, the aging pirate survived assassination attempts by rival sea captains, diplomats, and trained killers, none of which succeeded. Instead, it was the plague, not an enemy, that finally felled Ward. He died in his palace in 1622, at the age of 70, leaving what has been called one of the era's longest and most remarkable pirate careers. Even in death, Ward's legacy persisted. The North African corsairs he helped train were now capable of sailing beyond the Mediterranean, expanding their reach as hard-nosed Barbary raiders into northern Europe. Scholars often highlight the transatlantic slave trade because of its sweeping impact on the Americas and the European powers that took part in it. Yet long before that system, an Arab slave trade operated across the Indian Ocean and Red Sea routes. Rising to prominence from the 16th century through the 17th century, European captives were seized and sent back to North African city-states to labor in forts or at the harbor. Between 1530 and 1780, an estimated 1.0 to 1.25 million Europeans were enslaved in North Africa. This history highlights the hypocrisy in English discussions of slavery. While some decried Africans being enslaved by Africans, many of the same voices were complicit in enslaving Africans themselves. There are also reported incidents of corsairs penetrating up the Thames as far as London, abducting people from their beds. Many lives were lost, and many were enslaved, though some managed to escape. Some converted to Islam, as Ward did. In June 1631, corsairs steered their square-rigged ships toward Ireland, attacking the small harbor town of Baltimore in County Cork in one of the era's boldest seizures of European slaves. During the Baltimore raid, roughly 109 villagers were captured. Many were English settlers taken from their homes and sold into the North African slave markets, especially in Algiers. White enslaved people were the corsairs' preferred cargo at the time. They hunted for human captives, seized them, and transported them to feed the slave markets of North Africa. Over 7 decades, John Ward lived many lives: a humble fisherman, a privateer, a deserter, a Barbary corsair, a teacher, an Englishman, an Ottoman, a Christian, and a Muslim. In his homeland, he was remembered as the era's most infamous infidel. To the men who followed him, he was a master of reinvention, the ageless pirate who bent fate and died with the bearing of a lord. What matters in John Ward's story is the opportunity laid before him. Stay a poor coastal sailor in England, or risk everything in North Africa to become a navy's leader. From almost nothing, he rose to real power, using his seacraft and shipbuilding knowledge to command. Such advancement would have been unimaginable if he'd stayed home. He's remembered as a renegade apostate, someone who left his community and faith for greed and power, willing to join the dark side of piracy. This made him infamous in his own time, even as today he is less widely recalled. His legend grew through playwrights and poets who were inspired by the Pirate King for decades. One famous ballad casts Ward at the height of his power, boasting with the line, "Go tell the King of England, go tell him thus from me, if he reigns king of all the land, I will reign king at sea."